Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Redemption Thursdays with Rabbi Pinchas Winston. I am Yehuda Shamroth of the Miriam Project at Ula Hour, and not with us tonight, but tries to be with us is Josh Wander, who is a multitasking person if I've ever met one. He was in the Army in America. He was in the Army in Israel. He's a rabbi. He's a tour guide. He lives on Har HaHetzitim, and he's running an Aliyah a committee right now with the Knesset, so he's a very busy guy. It's no surprise he can't join us. Tonight, the rabbi will be speaking about rebuilding the last and final Beis Hamikdash, the third temple. And please check his website. So you only have 36.org up there, Rabbi.
Yeah, I didn't see the traffic increase with the when I put it there before, so if your wife squished it in.
Okay, so 36.org is a beautiful website. You can hit all of Rabbi's teachings and his Parsha HaShavua, his weekly Torah portion, books, and newest book is Inspired. It's a beautiful book. That's the one right after Strategy for the End of Days, which was a beautiful read as well. And if you want to put it in the comments, I'll share to you how you can get it through me or the Rabbi or Amazon or through the Rabbi's website. Thank you so much for joining us, Rabbi.
Thank you. Okay. When it comes to Jewish history, it comes to life in general, but Jewish history specifically, the question is the cause the effect or the effect the cause? What do I mean by that? Well, for example, the spies went out to spy the land of Israel this time of year. They came back. We know the Gemara said they came back on the night of Tisha B'av, and they cried. They cried because they were afraid to go to Israel, and that was a mistake. And the Gemara calls it bechiras chinam. They cried for no reason. Selfish reasons, for no real. Hashem is God. God has proven himself over and over again, as we're going to say in next week's parsha. I showed you for you to know that I'm reliable and I can do all this for you, and here you are crying about worrying to go to Israel. Anyhow, so that they went out, and they spied the land, they came back, and they cried on the night of Tisha B'av. Hashem said, pronounced the judgment that because you have cried for no reason, for bechiras chinim, now I'll give you and all the generations to come a reason to cry as well. So, I mean, there's obvious questions to ask just off the bat, like, what did we do? They did it. They should be punished. Just like, for example, they died in the desert, but their children did not die in the desert. The Gezerah to die off over the next 39 years because of the sin, that was on them, wasn't on their children. So why should we have to share in that also for thousands of years until this very day? Tisha B'av is a day on which the Beit Hamikdash, both of them the temples were destroyed, and apparently the exile from Spain took place on that day, and who knows how many other things took place on Tisha B'av because of bechiras chinam, right? And if only they hadn't done that, and it seems like the problem would have been a problem any time of year. They happened to go out on Chof Tes Sivan for 40 days, and they came back, but it doesn't seem that it's relevant to the time period per se this time of year. But and as a result of that, we have the 3 weeks, right? Because on the other hand, the 3 weeks begin with Yud Zayin Tammuz. And Yud Zayin Tammuz is when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos. He came down, saw the golden calf, completely unrelated to the spies, except for the fact that the spies wouldn't have happened if the golden calf had not happened, because that changed everything. But that aside, right, it was a different sin. It was a different sin. And he broke the tablets. And as a result of that, we have many calamities have taken place on Yud Zayin Tammuz. You look in the halachas for him, broke through the walls, and etc. There's different things that happened in Yud Zayin Tammuz. Someone brought a Sefer Torah, a Greek guy, whatever. But the point is that it just seems to be those events took place when they did, and because they did take place when they did, now we have to observe those days because like any holiday, or fast day, it's commemorating an event that took place on a specific day. But we know that everything in the universe is based upon spiritual energy. That everything, there's the reason why Leil Seder is on the 15th of Nisan is because that's a night it's miyuchad to Gula. It's a night there's a special energy that comes into the world on that night. Why that night specifically? So that's a more Kabbalistic discussion to do the spheres and how things line up and the plan of creation. There's lots of things going on. But the point is that the energy to go up was at that time. And so it's like opening a door. If you try to go out of a place when the door is still locked, then it's much harder to get out. But if they happen to open the door and then you run out like a dog does, right? He waits till that door is open. The moment the door is out the door, right? That's the opportunity. So the same thing is, as that night came around, so that's why we were able to get out. So we know that the events take place more to do as an effect of a cause than the cause themselves. So the reality is that Yud Zayin Tammuz really was a day that was going to be a problem even before Moshe came down, even before the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai, even before the Jewish people even existed. Yud Zayin Tammuz was already a problem. And likewise, the 3 weeks that followed, and likewise, of course, Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av itself is a day that it's not that we mourn the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash in that day because that's what happened to happen. It's more the fact that we're mourning because of the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed on the day that it could happen. And in fact, the spies failed because of when they went out. Had they gone out another time of the year, seemingly, based upon this idea, they wouldn't have done what they did, and history would have been a whole different story. So why does it make a difference? So there's an argument in the Gemara, there's a machlokas in the Gemara between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua is from the students of Hillel, and Rabbi Eliezer is from the students of Shammai. And they're arguing over what's the first day of creation. It's famous machlokas. Anyone who learns Gemara knows this, I've heard it before. And I think it's Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph in Rosh Hashanah. And the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer is that the first day of creation is Chof Hei Elul, right? And then because we talk about Rosh Hashanah, the first day of creation being Rosh Hashanah, but it's not true, because that's when Adam was created. So therefore, that's when effectively history begins, because history is about man, not about creation of the world. Just we go back and talk about the creation of the world because that's the setup for man. But the official beginning, when God said, Bereshit Elokim es hashamayim es haaretz, and we brought the world to existence, that's on Chof Hei Elul, which of course we acknowledge, we celebrate that. Some people are very, they have a minhag that on Chof Hei Elul they read about the first day creation, and the next Chef Vav, and they read the next day creation all the way to Rosh Hashanah. So we definitely hold by that opinion. But there's another opinion, Rabbi Yeshua opinion, who says that no, the first day of creation was in fact Chof Hei Adar, which is 6 days in advance of Rosh Chodesh. Nisan. Sorry, but the first day would be Nisan, right? Chof Hei Adar is when God began creation, and then the 6th day would be the first of Nisan, which is also a very important time, right? So the question is that who's right? And how could you have a machlokas about this in the first place? How is it possible? So the answer given, different answers are given. Primarily the answer, they're talking about two different aspects of creation, which is really the answer, but it's even deeper Kabbalistically. And it's the background to this whole discussion. Even though it's so Kabbalistic, nevertheless, it's like quantum mechanics, quantum physics is so abstract. The average person sitting in a classroom of scientists and students who are talking about quantum mechanics and equations, you wouldn't understand a word was going on. Maybe you pick up a word here and there. But for them, like, what are you talking about? And then you might even ask the question, how is that relevant? And the professor would tell you, well, all the clothing you're wearing is a function of this, the shoes you have on, and the food that you eat, and your car that you drive. All of it somehow is traced back to these equations. These equations are the beginning of it, and some technocrat comes along and he takes information, finds a way to apply it and make money off of it. But it starts with these scientific equations in the laboratory or wherever we come up with these things. Actually, most of them are theoretical at this point, but same idea. So the same thing is true, is that everything that happens in the physical world, by definition, is a function whatever's happening in the spiritual world. If it doesn't originate in the spiritual world, it cannot exist in the physical world. Period. Because the light, to let it exist in the physical world, begins in the spiritual world. If it's not in the spiritual world, it doesn't exist at all. Nothing won't exist at all. So, therefore, it's relevant, very relevant, and it just happens to play out. And again, but there's so many analogies to make this point clear. Like an illness, for example. An illness, a virus. You can't see a virus unless you have a microscope. you're looking at a high-powered microscope, and then maybe you can see the virus doing its thing. But the average person, you look at your hand, you look at your saliva, whatever, you're not going to see a virus. But the virus is in there. It's inside your body. And eventually it'll become visible in some form or another. Your nose will run, your eyes will water, you won't feel well, you have a headache, right? These are all functions of being sick from the virus. So that becomes visible. But it began as a microscopic germ inside the body. And the same thing is true, that whatever happens, physical good or bad, has to, by definition, originate in the sphere. So therefore, if you want to understand the basis of what's going on historically and why the base of Mikdash was destroyed at that time, then you can go back. And then there is another question, because if that's the case, then of course, you read the Nevi'im, you read Hosea, and you read Yeshaya, you read Yirmiyahu, you read Yechezkel, you read these Nevi'im, and Hashem's just constantly criticizing the Jewish people for the way they're behaving, and they don't get it. They just don't get it. They just keep doing it, and it gets intensely bad, really. And they have prophets to tell them what God's thinking, and there's warning upon warning upon warning, and they don't respond to it. So they're all going, boy, those guys are Rishoyim. They're such evil people who they could have saved us from destruction of the base of Mikdash. They chose not to, and they ignored it, and they're really, really, really bad people. But the reality is that if you look what's going on behind the scenes, it starts to call into question whether or not they're as responsible for what they did, as they did it, because there's so many other factors that go into the fabric of history and the fabric of reality. For example, turns out, according to Kabbalah, that the machlokus between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is not really a machlokus, not an argument. They actually agree with each other. So it sounds like an argument, because he's saying Chofei Elon, he's saying Chofei Adar, right? They're two different dates completely. So how could that not be an argument? So the answer is because they both agree that both days are in fact days of creation. But how can they have 2 days of creation? Because, like we just finished saying, that the spiritual world is the basis of the physical world. And that being the case, now the question becomes, so then which is the one that is the basis of the other one? So according to Rabbi Yeshua, he says that the what you call creation is not this final finished product that we live on down here. I mean, this is why everything was made, because if it wasn't for this, that wouldn't exist. And that's the basis of Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. He says, I agree with you. The lights first came out. God first emanated his light on Chof Hei Adar. Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Yeshua. I agree with it 100%. That's Kabbalah. I'm not going to argue that. Right? 100%. But what I disagree with is that called the beginning of creation. Because if it doesn't end up making the physical world down the road, then it's levatalis. It's meaningless. God wouldn't have done that in the first place. But Rabbi Yeshua says you're right. I agree with that too. And I also agree that Chof Hei Elul is the first day of physical creation. He agrees with that. So they're not arguing, right? But on the other hand, if it wasn't for that emanation of light at the beginning, then you could never have that physical creation down the road. So 2 different points of view. Now, Lashon points out that you see, personality plays a role in how a person looks at the world. More principally, your neshama. How so he points out that this argument can be traced back to a specific midah, character trait, because Rabbi Yeshua came from Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel, he's the one who's famous for his patience, not getting angry, his more positive look at life and creation. He's the one to whom the converts, potential converts come. He has all the patience, and he finds a way to teach them and bring them under the wings of the Shekhinah. And Shammai is the one who chases them out. He's stricter. He's more, famous at din. And Rabbi Eliezer comes from him. So therefore, he's more in the realm of what we call simsum, more in the realm of gevura, strength, din, judgment, things like that. So therefore, he's more focused on the physical creation where all that takes place. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua, he's from the side of chesed. So because of the side of chesed, the light that first came out is called or chesed. It was the light of chesed. In fact, that light shone for 72 days. Now you'll ask the question, what do you mean 72 days? Creation is not even in existence yet. So how can there be 72 days? Time is tied to creation. So the answer is no, that's not true. Time is a convention that we use clocks and suns and moons and like that to tell time at this point. But time is an eternal concept, believe it or not, because normally time seems so mugbal, so limited, so finite. But there's time on all levels. It's all relative, and eventually there's eternity. And eternity also is a function of time, just that it's eternal time. So he's saying that the year before creation, in the process leading up to physical creation, on Chuf Hei Adar, Hashem shone a light for 72 days. Now you ask, why 72? That's a longer discussion. It corresponds, I'll tell you very simply, right? It corresponds to the expansion of Hashem's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke. You expand it using Yuds. So you have Yud Vav Daled, Hey Yud, Vav Yud Vav, and then Hey Yud once again. If you add up all those letters, you get 72, corresponds to the word of Atzilus, and that has a gematria 72. So that's the reason why. Next one down is 63, and then there's 145, and then 52. I don't go in order of numbers, but go in order of the letters and how they work out. Anyway, like I said, it's a longer discussion. But the point is that that's the gematria of Chesed. The gematria of Chesed is 72, and this light shone for 72 days. Now, if you're counting the year before creation, you lay it out like a year, months and all that, right? Then you would count 72 days, and that 72 days would end up being on the 6th of Sivan. The 6th of Sivan, of course, is the day on which Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, which is happening to be a date. That's when he did it. So therefore, we celebrate Shavuos on Vav Sivan because that's when they got it. Why did they get it then? Well, by the time left Mitzrayim, by the travel of the days. No. That was the date with destiny. 6th of Sivan, going back to creation, that's when the Torah had to be given. That's the music the history danced to, so to speak. To be there on the 6th of Sivan, everything had to happen retroactively. It's like someone who's building a condominium and they want to finish by a certain date, then they work backwards to figure out what has to happen when to get to that date on time. So the same thing. That was the day because that's when the light of 72 or Chesed, which is emanating down, so it's an emanation. It's God's light of Chesed coming to the world. Olam Chesed Yibana. You made a world with Chesed, right? A world of Chesed. That's light. This light coming in down, and it goes for 72 days. It stops on the 6th of Sivan. Okay, what happens after that point? So that's another kind of Kabbalistic point, but you'll notice in life that very often the first guy to file a patent doesn't make money. The second guy who files the same patent later on, right, he does make money. Very often you find, as much as we like to get it right the first time, and it's wonderful to do so, and no one wants to fail, and have to do things a second time, but the reality is a lot of times in life, you don't get it right the first time. And it's kind of built into creation, not because God got it wrong, but because the way that God set up creation specifically for the sake of making a world that can support the reality of man who makes free will choices and earns his portion in the world to come, required a process of what we call hispashtus v'histalkus. That's the Lashon, the language in Kabbalah, emanation and withdraw. Emanation and withdraw. So it went like this. The light comes down, it gets pulled back up. Goes down again a little bit further, it gets pulled back up. Goes down a little further, like one of those heart machines, right? Up and down, except it keeps going down further. Why this two-step process? So the best analogy I've come up with so far is like a construction site. You build a hole, and a big hole. You want to build an apartment building, there's a big hole in the ground, right? And because otherwise it's going to fall over. And then that would be the halal in Kabbalistic terminology. And then you have to build something. The first guys that show up are not the builders. They're not the builders. The first guys that show up are the suppliers. They're the ones who because the builders can't do anything with the supplies. They can come the same day, but that's not usually the way it works, right? So the suppliers come, they drop off all the supplies that were ordered, the rebars, the metal, the cement, whatever is necessary to put down the foundation, because they're not going to bring everything at one time. There's too much stuff and it's too dangerous. So they bring what they need as they need it. The trick is to try and stay ahead of the schedule so nothing you have to wait for anything. But they They drop off all the supplies, and then the builders come in and they start to do their thing using the supplies that are there. So likewise, the first emanation of light brings down the light necessary that to build that level of reality, but doesn't do the building itself. Just sort of leaves the light behind. The second light that comes down, which is more filtered, because it goes down further, that will then build that level. Like I said, this is deep stuff, and I actually translated some of this from the Leshem in translations of the Leshem that are available. Go into this in more detail, explain more detail if you're interested. But the point is that this is the way the light works. So you have a spashtus of light, an emanation of light of 72 days, and then the light's taken back again. And when the light's taken back, it's a withdrawal. The light's missing from creation. When it was there, it was great. When it was gone, it's dark. In 1967, we won the war in 6 days, preemptive strike, and we were successful beyond our imagination. These splashes of light. The 73 war, unfortunately, we almost lost the land. We almost lost the war. It was very close. That's what the world looks like when the light is withdrawn. When the light is there, people know God. They seek out God. Excuse me. They want to know God. When the light is withdrawn, you get agnosticism, atheism, you get immorality, all the stuff you see going on in the world today. People take God out of the classroom, out of life, etc., etc. But that's the reality. What happens when the light is withdrawn? And then the light came down even further next time for 45. So what happened? The light was pulled back, but in 3 different stages. It's pulled back first of all. Okay, but before that, the light is pulled back on the 7th of Sivan, and the 7th of Sivan. That's the day that Moshe was called up the mountain to receive the Torah. Now, again, you open the Chumash and you read the book, and it's just a series of events. He's pulled up. He's asked to go up. Now, what happens when he's gone? That we see that the camp becomes in disarray and chaos starts to happen. Eventually, the golden calf is built towards the end of the 40 days because the light's been withdrawn. Moshe going up the mountain was basically echoing the light that was withdrawn from creation prior to creation, 2,449 years before Moshe even walked to Har Sinai. And that's the basis of that. And the light was withdrawn for 63 days, but in 3 stages, 40, 14, and then 9. And it turns out that in the 40 days, it ends up being by Yud Zayin Tammuz, right? Then the next 14 days brings you to Rosh Chodesh Av, right? And then, of course, after that, you have the 9 days. And what took place during that period of time is the basis of all that goes wrong in creation. Necessary for the creation of evil, necessary for the existence of free will. Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, the pre-creation spheres that God made and broke to make this world that we're living right now. Also, in the translations, we want to see more details about this. I'm only bringing this down right now just to show you the basis of history a year before creation even began. So it turns out that already within history, you had this withdrawal of light. What Moshe, which is why God says to Moshe, you send them. You send the spies. I'm not sending the spies. This is a dangerous period of history to go that you're going to be blindsided. It's not going to work out well for you if you go at this period of time. The spies going out at this time, they're going at a time there's a withdrawal of light in creation every year at the same time. Even before there's a Beis Hamikdash, even before the Jewish people sinned, at this time of year, because of what happened prior to creation, the roots of history before creation created this 3-week period of time that gave rise to the golden calf, and gave rise to the breaking of the luchos, and gave rise to the spies going out and complaining and wanting to go at this time. Because that's what happens. When there's light in the world, simple, people have seichel. That seichel that people have to know right from wrong, right from left, is because the light of God, and that's our whole intelligence, is just the light of God. If it's available, we're smarter. We're more aware, we're more perceptive, we're more spiritually sensitive. But if that light is withdrawn, then people become blocked. They just don't think clearly, and they're more prone to make serious mistakes. So what Moshe should have said, or God maybe told Moshe, but Moshe should have said is, we shouldn't go now. Let's wait till after Tisha B'Av. Why? What's Tisha B'Av? I'll tell you later on. But in the meantime, it's a very dangerous time to go. You're not going to, if you see your enemy walking across an open field, that's not the time to cross the field. You wait till they pass, and then you go. It's a dangerous time. You're going to be more vulnerable. So Moshe should have told the spies, it's more vulnerable. Don't go. And that's also why the temples were destroyed as well, because of this. Then the light comes back down a second time for 45 days, right? And at the end of the 45 days, that brings you to Chov Hei Elul, when physical creation actually begins. And there's more to that whole discussion because it shows you how also the flood, and Noach and the Teva, it all works out in terms of that, and this is the basis of history. Just like, for example, your DNA, you don't think about this very much, but your DNA is dictating to your body how you're going to grow and how you're going to change and how you're going to react to certain foods and certain environments. You just think, well, that's who I am. This is what's happening. I seem to have this moment, but it's all in there, right? Whether you're going to keep your hair, whether you're going to lose your hair. One gene inside dictating that. You're sitting there holding onto your hair. Don't go, don't go, don't go. Nice try. It's not going to happen because that gene saying, that's not for us. It's not our thing. So the same thing is true of all history. The history works the exact same way. So that's why here we are, 6,000 years later almost. We're still waiting for Mashiach to come. There's no question. It's possible. We're supposed to believe it's an emunah. It's one of the 13 principles of faith. No one can contradict that Mashiach can come any day, right? But you'll notice that the emphasis is on, I have to believe that. I have a mitzvah to hope for that. Whether I can bring it or not is another story. Whether it's going to happen in my lifetime, many, many Tanaim have come and gone, come and gone, come and gone. They believed in it. But, there's so many times when it looks like yes, but that it isn't, why not? The Holocaust, people really believed it. It couldn't get any worse. And that was it. History was over. Right? Just like, for example, the Twin Towers happened, and we thought, well, we're not going to recover from this one. Not without a war of Gog and Magog here. And we thought when they invaded Afghanistan, but we did. Here we are, 23 years later. And the world's still going on. But it was part of the progression. No question about that. It did change everything. But God has a timetable. And history is his timetable. And certain realities are built into creation. And one of which, for example, it's brought down that, right there, Rashi brings it down the fourth pasuk of Ma'aseh Bereshis. It's right at the beginning. It's a very interesting thing because really the truth is that Rashi says he's a pashtan, meaning that he only gives you the simple explanation of something. He's not into medrash. I mean, personally, he's with everything, all of Torah. But in terms of his commentary, he says, my job is only to smooth the bumps. I'm only coming here to provide you with a simpler, way to approach the Torah, things that don't make sense, you understand them better, some background information. But I'm a pashtan, pshat, simple explanation. But then there's places where Rashi doesn't provide that, and sometimes, we can see why that it just doesn't work. Other times it's not so clear, and there's times we think Rashi should do, and he doesn't do it. So people have even written books saying, "What's bothering Rashi? What forced Rashi to say this thing that doesn't have to be said?" And one of those things is right back there on the fourth verse, when it says that God was mavdil between the or and the choshet, between the light and the dark. He's made a separation, right? They call the light day and the darkness, night. And then comes the next verse, and without Rashi on that pasuk, we would not have a question. But Rashi comes along and says, "Let me tell you something a little bit deeper over here." What's the deeper thing? This separation is not really what you think it is. First of all, there's no moon and stars at that time. So you have to ask the question, then what's being separated? Which is why Rashi says what he says in the end. But he says that the separation that God made was with respect to the Or HaGenuz, the hidden light of creation. And that light of creation is so powerful that God said Rishaim should never get their hands on it. So therefore he hid it, it says, based on the Gemara, for righteous people in the future. And Rashi brings it down right there. It's quite a Kabbalistic, midrashic thing to bring in, but Rashi does, okay? And the Leshem is Mechadash, he gives over a Chiddush saying that the actual hiding doesn't mean that God, hid it and no one can access it. And the main light, we can't. But aspects of it, the Torah, is built upon this light. Our souls are a part of this light. The light's in the world. So why can't some people access it? Because the hiding of the light, says the Leshem, was that you can only access it if you're at Tzaddik. Only tzaddikim, what they do, they're maisim tovim, they draw this light to them, and once they get it, they can see things and understand things and relate to things and reach for higher levels of existence that the average person will not and cannot and will not see because their actions won't allow it to come in. I imagine it's kind of a relative thing that if you're partial tzaddik, you get partial light. If you're a bigger tzaddik, you get more light, right? But when you're learning Torah, right, you have access to this light. And as Rashi points out, as the Gemara points out, that this light is going to come back. Once evil's gone, and there's no longer Yetzer Hara, so there's no more evil people in history. So then Hashem is going to put the light back into the world. And it'll be available. And it'll just elevate everything. I'm not even going to take the time to try and describe it. It's beyond comprehension right now. It's just too, we can talk about it in some terms, but it'll be so overwhelmingly powerful. What you will know, what you will understand, what you'll be able to relate to. You look at yourself like an angel more than a human being compared to what we are right now. But that light's going to come back towards the end of history, and it's brought down in Kabbalah that gradually, slowly. The Vilna Gaon said, because the Zohar said that at 5500 we crossed in his time a very important, boundary in history, because the days correspond, the millennia correspond to the days of creation. So just like the day 6 was Erev Shabbos in Gan Eden, likewise the 6th millennium is Erev Shabbos for the world to come. So therefore, we're approaching Shabbos, and in 5500, that's Chatzot. That's the halfway through the day, which begins at night in the Jewish world, and it has a day after that. So 5500 was the sunrise, really, basically. And when sunrise happens in Erev Shabbos, the Kedusha Shabbos starts to spark. And as you go deeper into the day, especially after Chatzot, it becomes literally the Kedusha Shabbos is already in the 6th day. So you're already accessing it. So that would mean that the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light of creation that Rashi was talking about, was hidden. By definition, as we approach the end of history, then we're also approaching the 7th millennium, which means we're approaching the world to come, which means the Shabbos of all history, Yom Shuvlu Shabbos. So therefore, this light has to be available in the world already. Now, gradually, slowly, which explains a lot of the miracles that have taken place and will take place and are taking place every single day. And it also explains all the evil. Because we learn in many places, but specifically Mitzrayim, if you recall the shir we had there about why we left Mitzrayim so quickly, until God is finished with free will for man, there has to be a balance of good and evil. So if you're going to increase the power of good, then God is also going to increase the power of evil. And vice versa, of course, right? But mostly the other way around. Because if good overcomes evil, if it's too powerful, like happened in Mitzrayim, then evil will be destroyed. If evil is destroyed, there's no free will anymore. So as long as free will needs to remain, and it still does, you have to have both components. Otherwise, you can't make a choice. So therefore, there has to be good and there has to be evil. And they have to be somewhat in balance. And they're not always in perfect balance, clearly. They're not always in perfect balance. But for the most part, there has to be an ongoing balance. So that's why God hardened the hearts of the Egyptians, and specifically Paro. That was Hashem giving back some of that power to evil so it could chase after the good and give the Jewish people a choice to have Emunah and Bitachon by Yam Suf. And that's history. So based upon this, you can actually see the good that's in the world that you can't see by seeing how bad the evil is. Because if there's a lot of evil, a lot of confusion, a lot of anti-God behavior, that has to be counterbalanced to the good. So then why is the good the bad so pronounced? Why is it catching our attention? Why is it only the bad is getting stronger, not the good? Because very simple. that when it comes to the bad, it spreads out and it's noisy. That's why it's called, Rashayim. The letters of Russia, Resh and I is also Ra'ash, which is like a noise and loud, and it's like they control the media, they control, they make it's like you have a classroom of 10 or 15 children, okay, and everyone behaves himself, but one child doesn't. He's a brat. He's obnoxious. He's noisy. He's disruptive. What happens to the other 14 children? It's as if they're not even there. That one child steals the show because he gets all the attention because he's so obnoxious. Same thing with the Arab world. Exact same thing. A small band of people, but they're the noisiest. They make the most noise. They scream the loudest. They yell. We just go about our business quietly. But the same thing is true when it comes to tzaddikim, Rishayim. You'll find a lot of Rishayim because that's how evil works. It spreads out. People just latch on because the Yetzer is so strong. But the good itself is concentrated amongst a few people. You can have one tzaddik holding the balance of tons of Rishayim on the other side. One tzaddik holding, the Gemara says that Rabbi Pinchas ben Dosa lived off a barrel of carob from week to week. He lived in poverty. He chose to. He didn't have to, but that means he wasn't interested. Not because he wasn't interested. He was interested in God, and he was rich spiritually, and that's all they cared about. And so for him, he ate minimally, and there was a barrel of carob. But says the Gemara, but the whole world eats because of him. He's the reason why the world's still here. Everybody else, meaningless, not doing anything important. They don't deserve necessarily to exist, but why they still? Because he's here. So he balances out. So the good itself, the powerful good itself, is in the world. You have to look for it. And quite frankly, you don't have to look so far, but it's amazing how we just take things for granted. I was talking about this with someone the other day as we were learning a sefer called Sefer Desnusa. It's a section of the Zohar with a commentary on a commentary. The first commentary is from the Vilna Gaon, the Gra. And you're trying to learn it, not easy. You have to have a lot of background information, and if you don't have it, it's like literally not like Gemara where you can kind of figure it out from the context. It doesn't work that way. But someone came along a couple of years ago, and Bitam Chacham, who knows a lot of Kabbalah and Torah in general, and he wrote a commentary in the commentary. And reading his commentary is like, wow, now I understand. Now, day after day, there's almost not a page that goes by without some deeper explanation of something that I never knew before, but now I'm so glad I've seen it, and now it changes your perspective. That's Or HaGenuz. That didn't always exist. It's not that the printing press came into existence because technology reached that point, and then we have Gemaras that everyone can learn now because of that. It's because the Gemara had to come into the world at that time, because 5,000 was a big year too, right? And as a result of that, the world got that light that gave people the ideas to make a printing press. And the Industrial Revolution and all these other things are somehow, but it's used for so much not spiritual. 100%. That's the way the world works. It balances out, right? But the light is there if you never look for it. And the explosion being once upon a time, almost nobody went through Shas unless you're living in a higher level yeshiva and you're a Talmid Chacham and you're one of very few people. Today they have advertisements for everyone to go through Shas. You got programs upon programs, and you can learn on your computer and your tablet, the telephone, and it's like unbelievable. That's all a function of the Or HaGenuz. That's not just progress. That's just not mankind going further in time. That's the Or HaGenuz leading man further in time. That light. Having said that, there's that's just a surface view of the idea. But having said that, the Gemara says that any generation in which the base of Mikdash is not built, it's as if it was destroyed in that generation. And it's like I'm sorry, I didn't build it. It's not here. And today, we can't even go on the Temple Mount at this point in time, between the Halakha and the Tuma and World War III. It's like some people go up, but we can't go the full distance. And that's like, but the idea of building the base of Mikdash seems so remote. It's going to come down from Shemaim. It's already being built, But the Gemara said, the question, how? How can that Gemara statement exist? Because everybody knows it's much easier to let something that you have wither away, break, as the Gemara says, that when Nebuchadnezzar came to destroy the Beis Hamikdash and felt so proud of himself, he got through and destroyed the house of God. God said, don't pat yourself in the back too much. It was an already destroyed house. It was already ground floor. In other words, these people, the Kedusha left it a long time ago. It's just a building now. I mean, you have to treat it with holiness, but still, it doesn't have the koyach to repel you, to keep you out of the country right now, because that was lost because of the behavior from before. So, to lose something that you had is easier than to build something you don't. I mean, it's just more effort, more work, more organization. This exists. Now just protect it. It's like the mitzvahs, the positive mitzvahs versus the negative mitzvahs. Negative mitzvahs just don't do. Don't just sit on your hands and don't destroy the world. That's why they correspond to the 365 days of the year, because of solar year creation. Don't destroy creation. But 248 mitzvahs, the positive mitzvahs, that is kul v'aseh. To get up and go do it, to inspire yourself to get up and go do it. And that takes work, much harder than not doing an avera. So, I mean, theoretically, not for everybody, I guess, depends how closely there is the person, how to type it, but in general, that's the idea. So what does the Gemara mean? How can I be responsible, even if I have seen Shechinah? Even if I'm doing the same things wrong that caused the Beis Hamikdash to be destroyed back then, how can it be equated? So the answer is, right, a couple places, if you pay attention and you know the sources. It's brought down, and Targum Yonatan also talks about this. Leil Seder in Mitzrayim, the very first one that the Jewish people kept, that God said you have to bring a korban Pesach and all that. Mitzrayim, not yet near Israel. You can still build the altar outside the temple. It was still early in history, but nonetheless, a korban Pesach was one that had to be eaten in the Beis Hamikdash. At least it has to be not eaten there, but it has to be at least prepared in the Beis Hamikdash. There's a Beis Hamikdash, not even Yerushalayim yet, per se. So so the Leshem explains, and really again based on the Zohar itself says it, that what did God do? God took the light that's going to be the light that's meshubad, is miyacha to the base of Mikdash in the future. It's going to be the basis of the light of the and he shone it, he emanated it onto the Jewish people that night in Mitzrayim, and it transported them, at least spiritually, to the Beis Hamikdash. So when they sat down in their houses in Mitzrayim, the reality of the Beis Hamikdash was right there with them. They became unified with it. It was part of the reality, even though they're right there physically. I don't think they physically left, doesn't say that, but they spiritually, it doesn't make a difference they did, because everything has to do with where you are spiritually in the end, not where you are physically. The bottom line, I know it sounds counterintuitive because we're so physical, that's what we think, but the reality is where you are spiritually, that's what counts. That's why two people can die on the exact same spiritual wrong. The exact same, but one's going up, one's going down. And the one that's going up, he's going to go to Shemayim. He's going to go to Olam Haba. But the one going down, it's the exact same wrong. Facing downward, he's going to Gehenna. Because where you are spiritually, that's what counts the most. So Mitzrayim, they were able to have the reality of the Beis Hamikdash based upon what they were doing, and the Chesed of Hashem was a unique situation. But you see the possibility. The Gemara says that anybody who's osik in the karbanis, there are yeshivas that actually learn zvachim, karbanis, and make a point of it. The Chavas Chaim was very makbid about that. To look, he was a Kohen, to know, because the Beis Hamikdash should come back, the halachas, right? And usually most people, it's not for me, it's not zvachim, not the the kodashim part of Shas. These are practical halachas of everyday life. But Gemara says that anybody who actually is osik in them, Kodesh Baruch Hu counts it as if they actually were makriv them. So there's two ways to look at that statement. You can either say, and that's why I say in the Karbanos in the morning, before Mincha is so important, right? Because the Gemara says it. You can either say it's not really true, but God says it's like, check mark. It gives you a little, you did it, and therefore I will consider it to be like that. But based upon this, and based upon that, and based upon that over there, it means that God's saying, you understand, that yeah, physically to do it and carry that, that's a great thing. That's ultimate, right? But you should know that just being intellectually absorbed in the topic, be spiritually connected to the idea itself, is like literally being involved in it as if you're on the Beis Hamikdash. When I saw this halacha, when I saw these ideas, yeah, I began to think about even just saying the karbanos in the morning, but also davening Musaf on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, right? Don't just say the words. Actually, imagine this happening on Har HaBayis, and if you're a Levi or Kohen, being part of the service, or Yisrael watching it, and my daughter they used to have at those times. But like get real with it, become like osik and attach yourself to it, and all of a sudden you can transpose yourself and transport yourself to the reality of the Beis Hamikdash. And that's what the Gemara is telling you. The Gemara is saying that any generation that the Beis Hamikdash hasn't come back yet is not because it wasn't built physically, it wasn't built spiritually. And that's the thing you can do. You don't have to go up in Har HaBayis for that. You don't have to anger or aggravate the United Nations to do that. You don't have to even leave your house. You can do it right there in your home, in the basic medrash, in the basic Knesset, right? By this connection and focus, drawing down that light that comes down Leil Seder every year automatically, but specifically at all times. That's what these 9 days were for. That's what these 3 weeks were for. It's not only that we're mourning. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that's a secondary element. Wow, how can that be? Because that's not the essence. The mourning is to get to the other part. The other part is, hey, wait a second, Beis Hamikdash? Wow, what does it mean to me? What am I missing because of it? How does a Shekhinah feel while it's in Galus, even though I'm having a blast? Is it having a blast? No way. No Beis Hamikdash, no blast for the Beis Hamikdash, for the Shekhinah. So you wrap yourself up in this reality. You literally create it that's like palpable. The reality of the Beis Hamikdash for yourself and then your family and the world around you. That takes work, takes concentration, takes focus, but we do that for things we want, for things that we relate to this too. And that's what the Gemara is saying. That the Beis Hamikdash has not been restored and rebuilt in a specific generation, it's because the part that they can do, the actual focusing and building it spiritually by drawing that light into the world, they're not doing it. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them. And therefore, it's as if it was destroyed in that generation too. So we're approaching Tisha B'Av. Here it comes, right? Shabbos Chazan first, and then Tisha B'Av, and then we're going to be over and working our way up to Rosh Hashanah already. But these 9 days specifically, and these 3 weeks, they're shorashim, right? Or they're mushrash at least in pre-creation. The lights of the lights of the lights. We're at the end of history, on top of all that, which means the Or HaGanuz and Mitzvot Seis, in the world, it's available. Look at the Sfarim, look at the Torah. Yeah, look at the evil. Forget about that. Tons of evil, no question about that. But that's the whole point. The fact that there is so much evil means there's so much light too, so much good too. Go get it. Go get it. And if you do that, not only do you get the schus of being a rebuilder of the Beis Hamikdash, but you rebuild yourself at the same time. Because we don't look anything like we once did. I don't mean us personally, but if we were to stand next to a Jew with all their sins that they did in the Midbar, next to a Jew in the Midbar, we wouldn't recognize ourselves as Jewish people, even though we have tzitzis and Torah mitzvahs. The mahus, the fabric of the people who talk to God, connected to God, whole different level of reality. That's what we have to get to. That's what this time is for. So as negative and as distracting as it can be at this time, there's a very, very important positive side to all of that. When it's Beis Hamikdash oriented. If it's just, I don't want to think about the 9 days, I don't want to get too down about it. No, it's not the issue. It's not the point. But if your whole focus, you can even take joy. You can even have simcha, remembering, recalling the Beis Hamikdash and anticipating its return. That's building it the third and final time. And then, B'ezras Hashem, will be zeicher to see it actually come down physically as well. I'm signing off. Shabbat Shalom on behalf of Mrs. Shamroth and Josh Wander. Thanks for watching and being part of this, and you should have a peaceful Shabbos, God willing, there should be the Jewish people should be safe wherever they are in the world, and soldiers should be safe in whatever capacity they're fighting. The hostages should come back, God willing, and we should be zeichet to see B'ai Shlishi come in our lifetime very, very soon, and it will, B'ezras Hashem. And as a result, they'll see the end of evil altogether. Shabbat Shalom.